I was alienated from my own marriage by the very people I called family. I married Emily, but it turned out I only married a name, a body. Her soul and heart, along with her entire family, remained forever closed off to me. I spent my whole life searching for a family to belong to, but in the end, I lost my wife because I couldn't become a part of her world. This is a brutal truth. When you get married, you don't just marry one person, you marry their entire world. And if that world never embraces you, if you're forever an outsider in the eyes of their family, then love, no matter how deep, isn't enough to keep you there. This isn't a story of a love triangle or blatant infidelity. This is the quiet, lingering pain of abandonment, of feeling like you don't belong in your own home. Because sometimes the biggest secret isn't in what's said, but in the glances, the unfinished sentences, the silent acts of exclusion. Listen to my story so you can re-examine your own relationships to understand that acceptance from your partner's family is sometimes a vital factor for a marriage, a secret only revealed when it's too late. My name is Lucas, 35, a systems technician at a large hospital in Minnesota. My life was quite stable, with a job that demanded meticulousness, intense focus, and problem-solving under pressure. My personality is somewhat quiet, introverted, not overly outgoing, but sincere and trustworthy. I don't have a picture-perfect family to boast about or to tell heartwarming stories like others do. My parents divorced when I was very young, each going their separate ways, and I grew up lacking affection, experiencing the distance of relatives. My childhood memories are of cold houses, solitary meals, and rare family gatherings, always filled with awkwardness, dry, polite questions without any real warmth or connection. I didn't know what it felt like to be embraced in the warm arms of a large family or to hear joyous, noisy stories on New Year's Eve. That's why deep down in my heart, I always longed for a real home, a large extended family with cozy meals, bustling conversations, intimate laughter, where everyone genuinely cared for each other, where I could be an indispensable part. And then I met Emily. It was during a fall picnic organized by mutual friends amidst the vibrant golden leaves and fresh air of the suburbs. Emily was a radiant, open, perceptive woman who always exuded positive energy. What impressed me most about her wasn't just her beautiful appearance and bright smile, but her almost absolute intense love for her family. Emily grew up in a traditional, closely knit family. Her mother was a meticulous homemaker, her father a successful businessman, and she had two older brothers who always protected and looked out for her. Every weekend she spent time with her parents, siblings, vibrant gatherings filled with laughter, distant trips together. She spoke of her family with boundless pride and love, a bond I had never experienced or witnessed. That very contrast drew me powerfully to Emily, like a thirsty man finding a spring. I admired the family affection she had, admired the bond, the care they showed for each other. I saw in Emily and her family something I had always lacked, a void I always wanted to fill. I believed that if I could become a part of her closely knit life, I would find true happiness, find the sense of belonging I had always yearned for. I dreamed of crowded Christmas dinners, picnics with the extended family, where I would no longer be a solitary individual, but a beloved and fully accepted member. I thought that Emily's love and my efforts would be enough to open that door. We fell deeply in love. Our love grew naturally, sincerely. Emily loved my calmness and reliability, and I loved her warmth and vivacity. We had romantic dates, talked through the night, sharing all our dreams and hopes. When I expressed my desire to become a part of her family, Emily squeezed my hand tightly and said, "Of course, my love, you will be a part of my family. Everyone will love you." That promise at the time felt like a lifeline for my soul. After 2 years of dating, we decided to get married. I thought, this is it, the door to a real family is opening before me. I married Emily not just for the love I had for her, but for the longing to belong to her connected world, to become a true member of her family, to make up for the emotional deprivation I had experienced. But then I quickly realized a harsh truth: I never truly married into her family. No matter how deep our love was, it couldn't erase the invisible barriers Emily's family had erected, barriers stemming from prejudices, expectations, and deep-seated conservatism. This is the first secret revealed. A man carrying emotional scars from the past, especially a lack of family affection, can intensely, almost blindly seek compensation and belonging within his partner's family. This can lead him to overlook initial signs of non-acceptance, believing that love and his own efforts will change everything. However, acceptance from the in-laws is a crucial factor, and if it's absent, even deep love can hardly fill that void, creating an invisible crack right from the start of the marriage. Differences in family backgrounds can create subtle, hard-to-break prejudices. From the very first days when I was nothing more than Emily's boyfriend, I sensed a difference, an invisible barrier her family put up. I tried to dismiss it, thinking it was initial shyness and that everything would be fine once they got to know me better. I was wrong. Their family doors seemed to open only partly, just enough for Emily to step in, but would slam shut when I tried to put my foot in. The first time I visited Emily's home for a formal introduction, I prepared meticulously, choosing my best suit, buying thoughtful gifts for each family member. I expected a warm, friendly welcome like what I often saw in movies or stories about close-knit families. I was ready to talk about myself, my job, my dreams, hoping to receive interest and support. But no. When I walked in, her mother just glanced at me quickly, her eyes sharp and cold, without a warm smile or enthusiastic greeting. She turned to Emily, her tone filled with disdain, almost mocking. "Is this your technician boyfriend? Why does he look so thin? Will he be able to provide for you? I heard his salary isn't anything special." The phrase technician boyfriend felt like a slap to my pride, and the question about my salary was an open insult. I am Lucas, a systems technician, a profession requiring high expertise, logical thinking, and the ability to work under pressure in a hospital environment, not some nameless technician boyfriend. Even my name she couldn't bother to remember, or simply didn't care. That was the beginning of the feeling of being publicly belittled, disrespected right from the first glance. During that first meal, Emily's father, a man with a dignified appearance but eyes full of calculation and judgment, asked me which university I attended, and the question wasn't conversational but like a job interview. With what little pride I had left, I said I attended a local community college due to family circumstances, then taught myself specialized certifications and achieved my current position. He merely raised an eyebrow, his gaze full of assessment and disappointment, saying nothing more, then redirected the conversation to his sons who had graduated from prestigious universities. I knew in his eyes I didn't meet their standards, wasn't suitable for his beloved daughter. My career and my efforts were completely dismissed by a mere glance and eyebrow raise. I felt like I was being weighed, measured, and deemed inferior, unworthy. Even after we married, the privileges of an outsider didn't disappear. They became clearer, more painful. At every family gathering, no matter how hard I tried to fit in, I was left out of their internal conversations. They talked about childhood memories I didn't know, relatives I had never met, nicknames only they understood, family secrets shared that I couldn't grasp. I sat there forcing a smile, trying to join conversations, but being casually brushed aside like a shadow no one noticed. When I tried to participate in a sports conversation, Emily's brother just turned to me, chuckled, and said, "Oh, Lucas knows about basketball too. Thought you only knew about wires, or are you just learning to watch to fit in with us now?" A seemingly harmless remark, but it was full of contempt and ridicule. No one asked me what I had been doing lately. No one let me express my opinion on anything from politics to sports, even if I had information or knowledge. I felt invisible, non-existent in those conversations, like an uninvited guest, a servant without a voice. The peak of this feeling of exclusion was when we were expecting our first child, a baby I loved and longed for more than anything in the world, the light of my life. As the father, I eagerly wanted to choose a meaningful name for our child with Emily, a name we both loved, carrying our dreams and hopes. I had researched extensively, prepared a long list of names I loved, hoping for a new beginning, a small family of our own. But then during a family dinner, as everyone was discussing the grandchild's name, Emily's mother abruptly declared, her voice full of certainty, "No room for discussion. I've already chosen a name for the grandchild. The boy will be named Matthew, after his great-grandfather, to carry on our family line, for our family to have more blessings." Emily said nothing, just smiled and agreed, as if it were obvious, as if I weren't even there. I was stunned. I wasn't consulted, wasn't included in one of the most important decisions of my life, of our small family. I felt stripped of my right to be a father, brazenly pushed aside. I was the baby's father, but I had no right to decide my child's name, an unacceptable humiliation. And then when Emily's father decided to move, a heavy task requiring a lot of strength and time, I proactively offered to help. I thought, this is my chance to prove I'm a member, a reliable man capable of bearing responsibility. I prepared myself to carry, lift, do everything. But Emily's mother just waved her hand, her voice full of disdain. "Oh, no need, Lucas. The grandsons are already here. They're stronger, faster. Besides, we already have people. No need for you to bother." People. They already had people. I was Emily's husband, a son-in-law, the man who should have been prioritized, but I wasn't the person they wanted to rely on. I felt like a helpless outsider, a burden, a useless person, even though I only wanted to contribute, to show I cared, to prove I was part of them. I lived like an outsider despite being Emily's legal husband, the father of her child. I walked beside her, slept in the same bed as her, raised our child with her. Yet in the eyes of her family, I remained a stranger, someone who didn't belong, an unnamed, valueless technician boyfriend. All my efforts to integrate were ignored, cruelly rejected. I felt like I was being pushed out of my own life, out of my own family, out of the very marriage I had once hoped so much for. This is the second secret revealed. Non-acceptance from a partner's family might not come from blunt words, but from exclusionary actions, judging glances, and intentional disregard. No matter how hard you try, you remain an outsider in your own spouse's family. And this silent, persistent, continuous exclusion can cause deeper wounds than any argument, eroding the self-respect and sense of belonging of the affected person. My childhood lack of family affection made me even more sensitive and vulnerable to these behaviors. After years of enduring indifference and exclusion, I couldn't take it anymore. The feeling of being an outsider, being looked down upon, being ignored in my wife's own family, gnawed at my soul day by day, hour by hour, like a worm eating away at my core. I tried to talk to Emily about this, hoping she would understand, would stand by me, would protect me from those unintentional glances and words. I placed all my trust in her, believing she was the only one who could bridge the gap between me and her family, the only one who could change the situation. Emily, I once said to her, my voice full of hurt and helplessness like a final plea. That night I couldn't sleep, staring at the white ceiling, and the unfavorable words from her family echoed in my ears. I feel like they don't see me as part of the family. I feel like I'm just a stranger every time we go to your parents' house. I feel invisible. Do you see that? Can you talk to them for me? I'm really hurting and exhausted. I hoped she would hug me, comfort me, tell me she would talk to her family, or at least acknowledge my feelings sincerely so I wouldn't feel so alone. But her answer disappointed me more than ever, and it became a deep scar in my heart. She replied, her voice calm as if it were an obvious truth that needed no discussion or change, tinged with fatigue and resignation. I know, Lucas. I know you feel that way. I'm sorry, but they don't mean it. They're just very reserved with outsiders. You know my family doesn't easily accept anyone. They're used to living that way. I can't change my parents' personalities, honey. Outsider. After 6 years of marriage, after becoming the father of her child, after so many efforts to integrate, I was still an outsider. That statement was like a knife plunged straight into my heart. It not only confirmed that my feelings were valid, but also showed that Emily accepted that truth as obvious with no intention of changing it. She had become an intermediary standing between me and her family, but either unable or unwilling to do anything to bridge that gap. She wasn't protecting me. She was defending her family's behavior, prioritizing her own peace over my pain. Each time I felt hurt, marginalized at family gatherings, I would go to Emily, sharing my feelings as honestly as possible, with the faint hope that she would understand. I told her about them, not asking my opinion on naming our child, about them, not asking me for help when her father moved, even though I offered about the conversations I couldn't break into despite trying my best. And each time she would tell me with a face full of weariness, frustration, and avoidance, "Come on, honey, don't pay too much attention. They're just used to it. You have to be understanding of them. They don't mean any harm. Maybe you're just too sensitive, or you should try to integrate more." But it was her silence, her acceptance of her family's attitude, that gradually made me feel she wasn't on my side. She wasn't my ally in this fight against the feeling of exclusion. She didn't protect me. She didn't fight for my place in her family. She only asked me to accept, asked me to understand, asked me to passively endure like a coward. I felt more alone than ever, an ultimate loneliness right within my own marriage. I had a wife beside me, sleeping in the same bed, but no companion in my own pain. No one who understood and shared the burden in my soul. Her silence was even more painful than her family's unintentional words, because it showed that she was no longer on my side, but had chosen to stand with her family even if it hurt me. I felt like I was carrying an invisible burden that no one else could see. I tried to reassure myself, thinking maybe I was too sensitive, maybe I was exaggerating everything. I tried to find every reason to excuse her family and Emily. I tried even harder, buying expensive gifts, attempting to join conversations, even when unwelcome, even accepting sarcastic remarks, but it was all in vain. The feeling of being pushed aside, of being treated as a stranger in the very family I chose to be with, grew stronger and stronger, like a malignant tumor eating away at my soul every night. I started having insomnia. Nightmares of being excluded haunted me. I began to dread going to my in-laws' house, dreaded family gatherings, dreaded the indifferent glances, the conversations I didn't belong to. My illness, my loneliness worsened. I felt like I was drowning in a cold ocean, trying to bail out water with my bare hands. But the only person who could pull me up was standing on the shore, watching me sink without doing anything, or just saying, "Swim, the water isn't deep," without an ounce of empathy, without an ounce of action. This is the third secret revealed. When a partner consistently fails to stand by you, fails to protect you from their family's non-acceptance, and merely asks you to understand or not to mind, it leads to a profound loss of trust in the relationship. The spouse will feel isolated, abandoned even within their own marriage, and their partner's silence can be more damaging than any overt exclusion. That silence is a tacit acceptance of being treated as an outsider, and it also demonstrates a lack of empathy, an unwillingness to fight for the one they love, pushing the wounded person into ultimate solitude. The dull ache of exclusion continued to gnaw at me day after day. Each time I visited Emily's home, I felt like a shadow, an inanimate decoration in the room. I no longer hoped for any change from her family. What hurt me most was Emily's indifference to my feelings, her helplessness in protecting my position, and the profound lack of understanding from my own life partner. I felt like I had been fighting a losing battle alone. Then one day, the final blow landed publicly and agonizingly, making me realize that this relationship had rotted from within, beyond salvation. It was like a fatal knife wound to a bleeding heart, leaving no strength left to continue. The last time Emily's family celebrated her mother's birthday, a significant and annual event unthinkable, without any family member at a cozy cabin in the mountains. I wasn't invited. Not a direct invitation, not a call or text from anyone in her family. I didn't even know about the event until after it had already taken place. I only found out when I saw tagged photos on Facebook. The pictures were filled with laughter. The radiant faces of Emily's family, warm hugs, and I, the husband, the father of her child, was completely absent. The photo showed the entire extended family all smiling happy, and I stood there outside the frame, publicly excluded, without a shred of remorse, as if I had never existed, as if I were an inconvenient mistake. I looked at those photos, my heart chilling, a sense of emptiness engulfing me like an infinite void. It turned out I had been excluded from a major family event by my own wife. I felt like I'd been punched straight in the chest, unable to breathe, all the air seemingly sucked from my lungs, leaving only pain and despair. All my self-respect, all my efforts to fit in, vanished in that moment, turning to dust. I felt like I was no longer Emily's husband, but merely a passerby, an extra person in her life, something easily forgotten, worthless, meaningless. When Emily came home, I didn't question her with anger or resentment, but with helplessness, pain that had reached its peak, exhaustion and despair that had completely overwhelmed me. My voice was hoarse, choked with emotion, as if I were speaking my last words before giving up everything. Why wasn't I invited to your mother's birthday? Why did you go without telling me? Why did you do this to me? Emily? Do you know how much I'm hurting? Emily looked at me, her eyes showing a fleeting flicker of confusion, a faint hint of guilt, but then quickly returning to her usual indifferent, cold expression, like an impenetrable, invisible defensive wall. She replied with an unacceptable explanation, a superficial excuse, a blatant avoidance of responsibility. I thought you wouldn't want to go because you were sad throughout the trip last year. You just sat in a corner, didn't talk to anyone, and I saw you weren't comfortable. So this year I thought you wouldn't want to go. I only wanted what was best for you, Lucas. I didn't want you to suffer anymore. It wasn't that I didn't want to go. I just didn't want to feel excluded again. I didn't want to sit there watching them talk without me, laugh without me like an invisible ghost, an extra person. I was sad throughout last year's trip, not because I didn't like the trip or didn't like her family, but because I felt abandoned, excluded in my own wife's family, and Emily didn't understand or deliberately didn't want to understand that. She had turned my pain into a reason to discard me, to rationalize her actions, to hide the truth that she hadn't protected me, hadn't stood by me. She had chosen her family over me openly and cruelly, pushing me into the abyss of solitude. I fell silent, helpless. All words became meaningless. Even when I spoke the truth, expressed my pain, she wouldn't accept it, wouldn't understand, but instead tried to blame me, saying I was too sensitive or unwilling to integrate. She had uttered a blatant lie to evade her responsibility, a lie I couldn't accept. In that moment, I understood not only did I not belong to her family, but I was slowly losing my place in my own marriage. Emily no longer considered me a partner who needed to be shared with, everything needed to be protected, and needed to be part of every important decision. She had unilaterally decided to exclude me from a family event under the guise of thinking of me, but in reality it was a complete denial of my existence in her world and in her own life. My last shred of faith in this marriage completely crumbled, turning to dust. This is the fourth secret revealed. When a partner is openly excluded from significant family events and the other partner unilaterally makes this decision under the guise of thinking of you or blaming you, it is the clearest sign of a deep disconnection and lack of respect in the marriage. It shows that you not only don't belong to their family, but are also gradually losing your place and role in your own relationship. The feeling of being forgotten and marginalized by the very person you love will be the final straw, signaling an inevitable end. After that birthday, I knew it was time to make a final decision. A decision that would completely change my life. I couldn't continue living a life of loneliness, a marriage where I was a stranger in my own family, an invisible shadow in the eyes of the one I loved. I couldn't bear this feeling of exclusion, of abandonment anymore. That pain had transformed into an unbearable burden weighing down every breath I took. With the last glimmer of hope, I once again suggested couples therapy. I thought perhaps a third party, a professional, could help us see the problem clearly, help Emily understand my pain, and help us find the lost connection. I thought this is the last chance, the last door to save this marriage, to give our love one more opportunity, a faint light in the darkness. I told her that I felt isolated, that I needed her to stand by me, that I needed acceptance from her family, not just for myself, but for the future of our children, for the complete family I longed for. But Emily's reaction disappointed me to the core, pushing me into a depth of despair I never thought I'd reach. She refused, her voice firm, without a hint of hesitation or compromise, as if I were asking for something absurd. "I don't think that's necessary, Lucas. You're exaggerating things. All families have minor issues. You shouldn't overthink it. I think we're still fine. Do you really want everyone to know our business?" I wasn't exaggerating. I was just trying to save something that was rotting day by day. A relationship slowly dying in silence and distance. I was just trying to hold on to the last thread connecting us, a thread that was too fragile, liable to break at any moment. But she didn't see, or didn't want to see, the severity of the problem. For her, they were just minor issues, my oversensitivity. For me, it was pain tearing my soul apart, the reason I couldn't breathe in my own home. Her refusal to go to therapy was a direct refusal to acknowledge my pain, to make an effort to save our marriage, to rebuild trust. That was the moment I knew everything was over. There was no way out, no hope left for me. A month later, I moved out. Emily didn't stop me, didn't say a word. She just stood there watching me pack my belongings. Her eyes emotionless, not a single tear, not a plea for me to stay. I packed each item myself, each keepsake, and each item carried a memory, a sorrow, a part of a dead past. I looked at the house we had built together, where I had once dreamed of a happy family, and now it was just an empty shell, a cold space full of painful memories, extinguished laughter, broken promises. I left in silence, no tears falling on my cheeks, no words of reproach escaping my lips. Only a broken heart and an exhausted soul mixed with a hint of relief, a feeling of being freed from the invisible burden that had weighed on me for so long. 6 months later, we divorced. Again, not because of noisy arguments, not because love had faded, not because of a third party or any other betrayal, but because I was too lonely in the very family I had built, too lonely even within my own marriage. I couldn't continue living a life where I was an outsider in my wife's family and alone in my own marriage, a relationship where I felt no longer valued, no longer myself, no longer a person of worth. I needed a place where I was accepted, belonged, could be myself without having to try to fit in or pretend to be happy to please others. Divorce was a painful decision, but it was liberation. It was an acceptance that I couldn't change, others couldn't force them to accept me. I chose to free myself from a relationship where I felt I had no value, no belonging. A relationship that had suffocated my soul day by day. I chose the path of solitude to find myself again, to find peace in my soul, to heal the wounds I had endured. I decided to prioritize my self-worth and mental health because no one deserves to live in loneliness and exclusion in their own home. This is the final secret revealed. A marriage can fall apart, not because love has run out, but because of a lack of acceptance and belonging from the partner's family and the partner's indifference to that pain. When someone is continuously marginalized, seen as an outsider, and feels lonely in their own home, they will choose to leave to find peace and self-worth even if love still exists. The refusal to go to couples therapy is often the clearest sign that one party no longer wants to put effort into the relationship or fails to acknowledge the severity of the problem, leading to an inevitable end. After the divorce, I moved to a small apartment in another city far from the painful memories. I started over with a completely different mindset. I no longer felt weighed down by judging eyes or unintentional words. I found peace in my work and personal hobbies I had neglected before, and in new relationships where I could be myself, genuinely accepted without needing to wear a mask or try to prove myself. I still follow Emily on social media. She's still living her vibrant life, still close to her family, still posting radiant photos of cozy gatherings and distant trips. I hope she's found her own happiness and perhaps has also learned a lesson about understanding and acceptance. I no longer resent her. I understand that she was also caught between her love for me and her loyalty to her family. She chose her family, and that was her choice, a choice she might have struggled with deeply internally. Something I never knew, or perhaps she simply wasn't strong enough to resist the pressure and deep-seated prejudices from her family. Regardless, I am no longer a part of that world. My marriage to Emily was a costly lesson, a big scar, but also a profound, hard-earned experience I will never forget. It taught me that when you get married, you don't just marry one person, you marry their entire world. You marry their family, their culture, their expectations, and even their invisible barriers. And if that world never embraces you, if you forever remain an outsider in their eyes and your partner cannot or will not bridge that gap, won't stand by you, won't protect you, then love, no matter how deep, isn't enough to keep you in a lonely marriage, a marriage where you are merely a stranger, an invisible presence. Always communicate honestly with your partner about your feelings, about the barriers you encounter in your relationship with their family. Don't carry those pains alone. Don't suffer in silence. Clearly and firmly seek understanding and support from your partner. And most importantly, ensure your partner is willing to stand by you, protect you, and fight for your place in their family. Because acceptance from your partner's family is not just a nice to have, sometimes it is a vital factor for the existence and growth of a marriage, a factor that truly shapes your happiness. Don't let yourself become a solitary figure in your own home. Be brave enough to let go if you cannot find a sense of belonging. Thank you for listening to my story. A story about the pain of being forgotten and the liberation from a relationship where I had no place. If this story touched your heart, or if you have any thoughts or feelings you'd like to share, don't hesitate to leave a comment below. Please hit the like button, share this story with your friends, and don't forget to subscribe to the channel so you don't miss out on other profound stories. Stories about life, love, and the lessons we've paid a price to learn. Your support is what motivates me to keep sharing these pieces of my life so everyone can draw valuable lessons for themselves and build stronger relationships based on mutual understanding, acceptance, and genuine belonging. I'll see you in the next videos. Goodbye for now.